All right, everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Progressive Gentleman podcast. We're your hosts, Dan and Matt, and just want to say we appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in, support us. We're just a couple of guys nerding out about music, so we appreciate anybody taking the time to listen to us talk. We figure with 2021 coming to a close, we want to talk a little bit about our album of the years, favorite albums this past year, favorite songs, favorite moments, things like that. And what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, it's been a great year for music. I know we both have listened to a ton of different albums, probably near 50, if I had to venture a guess. I know, like, even just the list that I was jotting down my rankings on, I had, I think, 35 that hit my radar that really wanted to make sure I listened to. But yeah, we'll kind of run down our top 10, maybe mention some honorable mentions that were real close in the running that maybe didn't kind of make the final cut. I think the first one we'll start off here is Phineas, the Fire Itself. I know, Dan, it was high on your list.
Yeah,
so if you want to take over?
It sort of just cracked my top 10. It came in at number 10 for me. There's a lot of things about that record and about Phineas as a band that sort of resonate with me. They bring me back a little bit to some of the bands I listened to, high school and a little bit after high school. Certain moments give me Killswitch Engage vibes in that record. One of the big bands for me that it kind of made me think of, and it's a band that I hadn't listened to for a while, so it was actually kind of nice. I went back and listened to some of their stuff after that. Was Conducting from the Grave.
Oh, yeah.
They only released like 3 records. I think they were only a band for like 5 years or something like that. But they had a record called Revenants that is honestly one of my favorite records in the genre. So anybody out there, if you've not checked out Conducting from the Grave, do yourself a favor and do that.
That's a solid call out. Yeah, I think for me, they had a lot of kind of some of the first metalcore bands that I got into. It's like Unearth and a little bit of Darkest Hour in there as well, and that kind of made me enjoy this album. That it was almost like a hit of nostalgia. That's just like, I mean, they obviously do their own thing as well, but I could definitely get some flavors of Unearth and Darkest Hour in there.
Those are bands I didn't really think about whenever I listened to that record, but now you bringing them up, I mean, that's almost spot on. Unearth in particular, the Zombie Autopilot and things, and that's that very, very similar. But yeah, they do a lot of like a good mix of things, like the clean and harsh vocals. I feel like it's mixed well, and it's pretty consistent record. I mean, not necessarily any one song in particular is, the highlight of the record for me. They stay pretty consistently good throughout. But if I had to pick a couple songs, I'd say Thorns is a really good song.
That's actually probably my favorite on the album. Is Thorns.
Yeah, there's just that like groove intro, that riff in the beginning that just kind of gets stuck in your head a bit, and then
it starts off so strong. I think that's like you go into the song like, oh damn, this is good.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like that's a thing they focus on in their record, on just in music in general for them, is just a catchy intro to draw you in, because I felt like I was saying that for a lot of the songs on that record. Was like, oh, that intro, that just it makes me, catches my attention, makes me keep wanting to listen to the song.
Yeah, they didn't really like have any songs that kind of fade in. They just start like balls to the wall at the beginning of the song, and like they're ready to go.
Yeah, I would say maybe the only song with like, and there's a couple more, but Dream Thief, which is probably my favorite song on the record.
That's a really
they
good
have
one
that
too.
Like ambient intro where it's like sort of I don't know if it's keys or if it's synth or whatever before it leads to that just crushing like tremolo picking heavy technical riff, which is another one of my favorite moments on that record probably, and they bring it back throughout the song, and it's just I enjoy that a lot. But yeah, overall I would say, really consistent, really solid record. It's crazy that a record of that caliber is coming in at number 10 on my list, and not even cracking your top 10. I think that's a testament to how good the music was in 2021 for sure.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was close. It was my number 12, and it actually I feel like there was more competition in the like 10 to number 5 range for me, that I was like really hard to decide, because like, oh, I really like this album, but you know, my 1 through like 3 are spoken for already.
Yeah, I would say honestly that's probably where our lists differ the most as well, is that like 10 to 5 range. I think you're going to see the most bands sort of, you know, the most differences in our lists in that range. I think we're sort of pretty much in the same mentality with the top 5. Maybe not the same order, but you know, the standouts for this year, I think we're pretty close in the top 5.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works though. Like our top bands were basically or not the same, but they're very similar. But then like our last part, you can see like our other influences stand out. Like
yeah, for sure.
Like this next one, for example.
Yeah, let's switch it up.
My number 9 is Hail the Sun's New Age Filth. I really enjoyed this album. I know you weren't quite as keen on it.
For me, it's not that I don't appreciate Hail the Sun. I think they're immensely talented. I've seen them live on a tour with Good Tiger, The Contortionists, Dance Gavin Dance, and they give me Dance Gavin Dance vibes a bit.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
But I just don't resonate with their vocal style as much as other people do. Which
I can understand that for sure.
Everybody has their own tastes, and I'm not trying to take anything away from them musically. It's just for me personally, I didn't connect with it. So I'm gonna let you talk more about this record.
Yeah, I definitely I vibe with this one much more. I'm a huge fan of Good Tiger, and also I haven't listened to them in a while, but you know, I was a huge fan of the Mars Volta as well, and it gives me a lot of like the vocalist gives me a lot of that vibe. So, and then like you said earlier, Dance Gavin Dance too, which I enjoy.
I'm gonna throw another band in there. From First to Last, I get a little bit From First to Last vibes for some reason. I know not necessarily, you know.
Yeah, and Fall of Troy too is definitely like the FCP remix and stuff. I definitely got a lot of that, and those were some of the kind of early bands that when I was first getting into metal as well. That
I love that. That entire Doppelganger record from Fall of Troy is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's like, this kind of feels almost like the progression of them, as like of that type of music. My favorite record or song on the record is Solipsism, but there were a few really good ones on there, like Domino, and so was it the Parasitic
Cleanse?
Yeah.
So
Parasitic Cleanse.
Those two, the last two you just said, Domino and Parasitic Cleanse, those were probably my top tracks if I had to pick. Both of those songs made my like top songs of 2021 playlist. So I'm not fully hating on Hail the Sun here.
Oh no, I wasn't trying to say that you were
I know.
Shitting on them or anything.
And I really respect Donovan, the lead singer / drummer, his just musical ability. Watching him sort of play drums and sing live, sort of, you know, almost like Under Oath in a degree. Like I don't remember the guy's name. That's probably a huge sin on my part. But the drummer from Under Oath, who also does clean vocals and stuff like that while he plays.
Yeah.
I mean, Donovan does a lot of that stuff live.
Yeah, that's definitely impressive when the drummer is like Mastodon does that too. Their drummer does a lot of vocals, and that's really impressive. I think like trying to keep the beat and singing at the same time is like also not being like winded as hell when you're playing that fast and intensely.
I mean, I get winded just sitting here and talking half the time. So you know,
podcasting is hard.
I can't even imagine, you know, doing what he does on a daily basis whenever they're performing live and on tour and stuff. So I do want to, you know, shout that out. That I respect the hell out of that.
Yeah. So that's why I made my top 10 like. It was just another one of those, similar to Phineas. It was a lot of like nostalgia, I think, was factored in for me, that it had the Fall of Troy and Mars Volta and Good Tiger. I mean, not that Good Tiger is an old band, but it was like I've been listening to them for a little while, and you know, just recently kind of discovered Hail the Sun, actually from you.
Yeah.
So it's funny that
I knew you liked Good Tiger, and I figured honestly that I thought it would strike a chord with you there. So I'm glad it did. I
appreciate the suggestion.
Absolutely.
And a shout out to anyone listening too. You know, like I said, we always appreciate suggestions.
Yes.
So you can hit us up on the social media, and
please do,
of any Instagram or Twitter, whatever you prefer, and let us know if there's bands that maybe didn't make this list and stuff. So.
Yeah, especially now that you're sort of getting a feel for our music taste as well. I mean, and we're hoping that you discover some stuff, going back, Conducting from the Grave, check them out again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how about we move on here from Hail the Sun? Let's go to something significantly different from Hail the Sun.
Yeah, this is kind of a left field.
This is a band that honestly, for me, I just discovered not that long ago, and it's honestly from some of my favorite musicians and bands, sort of putting them on their album of the year list that made me even go and dive into them. And that's Humanity's Last Breath. Their record is Valde, I believe is how it's pronounced. If not, I apologize, but that's what we're going to call it.
Yeah, that would be my guess too, is Valde.
They actually cracked both of our top 10s. They came in and right at number 10 for you and right around 9 for me, and this is definitely the heaviest record to make my list. Probably your list as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of going through my list here just to double check, but yeah, it definitely, I think was, it looks like it's the heaviest. I mean, there are definitely songs by some of the other bands on my list, but that's the most consistently just like brutally heavy album on my list.
Just for me, I'm a big fan of like ambient metal, like something that sort of creates a soundscape but is also like brutally heavy.
Yeah.
And they do that on this record super well. I mean, it's ambient, it's heavy, it's beautiful, it's crazy. It's a strange trip that this record takes you on.
Well, it's like, the Contortionist does this, but I know they're a huge influence for both of us in our music taste. But there aren't many bands that mix the heavy with the ambient like that. And I think that's also why I enjoyed this one so much, because it just goes from like, oh, this is very ambient and kind of almost soothing, but it gets into like just insanely heavy.
I'll throw at least one band, maybe two out there that sort of do this for me as well. Fallujah. I don't know if you've ever listened to Fallujah, but they sort of mix that ambient and heavy, and I really enjoy that style of music. The other one that I'm struggling to think of, we were just listening to the other day. It's an Italian metal band.
Flesh God.
Thank you, Flesh God Apocalypse. That's another band that does that for me. Just that ambient, symphonic, like heavy, just melt your face off, brutal, beautiful. I don't even know any other words for it. It's just, I enjoy it.
Yeah, there's something about the opposite nature of the two, and somehow they fuse it together and make it work.
Right, and the thing that sort of threw me off for Humanity's Last Breath is I get that they're classified as deathcore. I understand why. I mean, there's the core breakdowns and things of that nature mixed in with the music, but I just think at its core, sorry to throw the word core out so many times, can make it a drinking game, but
you get hammered
at their core, I feel like they're almost just a traditional death metal band. I mean, like a symphonic or ambient death metal band. I enjoyed this record because of that. Favorite track on this record for me is by far Spectre.
That was me too, yeah.
It just has absolutely everything I want in a death metal song, deathcore song, whatever you want to call it. Just the crazy heavy riffs with the ambient backtracks, just bringing it to a whole nother level for me. And then that breakdown, like 3.5 minutes in or whatever, where it just comes out and, it doesn't come out of nowhere. They build to it, but what does come out of nowhere in that song is after the breakdown, where it goes into that clean vocal section.
Yeah.
That's like how they finish the song off is just,
that was the other thing too, with like they have the clean vocals in there.
It's not a lot, but it's enough to like.
Yeah, it's not so much that if you're into death metal and deathcore that like it's gonna completely steer you away from it, because I know that's kind of like a divisive thing there. But
you see that a lot in the different fan groups and stuff vocals. Like that, or just commenting on posts from bands like, oh, we liked you better when you didn't sell out and do clean vocals. And to me, in certain songs, it just brings it to a different level, especially when it comes out of nowhere, kind of like it does on that track. You know, you don't expect it with how heavy that song is.
Yeah, I feel like it fits well in there. I mean, maybe other people disagree, but...
And in my opinion, it doesn't take away from the heaviness of the track. Like, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't come in and then I'm feeling like, oh, now this song's not heavy anymore, or, I scoff at it now. Like, to me, posh. Yeah, to me, it was like, it made the song better for me. So I really enjoyed that. Two other songs. I just to go back to Spectre, because it's honestly one of my favorite songs of the year. Yeah. I just wanted to point that out. Of the whole year for me. Yeah. So that song just it has everything I look for in a song. Period. But two other songs I wanted to mention: "Dehumanize" and "Earthless." Those were two other tracks on that record that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, those are good as well. Yeah, for me, Spectre was definitely the standout song of I had my Google Doc sheet open with recording my favorite tracks and kind of keeping tabs on what I liked and kind of maybe what I didn't like so much of each album. But immediately I was like, Spectre came on. I was like, oh yeah, there's something different about this one.
Yeah, so and in Dehumanize, it opens with a breakdown, and as soon as any song that the first noteworthy piece of the music is a breakdown, it gets your attention pretty immediately. Yeah. So, and it stays pretty solid throughout. So, but yeah, overall, definitely the heaviest record to crack my top 10. And yeah, it's definitely worth a listen if you've never heard of Humanity's Last Breath or have never checked them out. Sort of like me 2 months ago, essentially. I would highly recommend doing so. And let's go ahead and transition to something, again, completely different than what we're talking about.
This list is kind of almost like a roller coaster.
It really is.
This next one, Starset Horizons. This was my number 8 record on my list. It was, for me, I really enjoyed, it was very different than I think a lot of the stuff in my top 10, I guess similar to Humanity's Last Breath, but in a very different way.
Almost obviously. Exact opposite.
Yeah. They're very poppy and sort of cinematic sounding, but I really enjoy the way the vocals are layered with such heavy instrumentation. I don't think sound-wise it's similar, but it gives me, from the way they layer their songs, it gives me some Sleep Token stuff where the vocals generally are softer and more clean, and then with really heavy chuggy instruments, and I like that sort of difference.
They definitely do the Sleep Token thing, that mix of sort of almost popular pop rock but then they'll come in with a heavy riff and you're just well, all right, well, this is that mainstream rock versus heavier music that Sleep Token does so well. Starset definitely does a good bit of that. I think they're a little bit more accessible than Sleep Token.
Yeah, I definitely think so too.
I think this is probably the most accessible band we're going to talk about. I think I think I've seen friends that I know listen to just nothing but what's on the radio have this playing on their Spotify. I think this is definitely the most, that Satellite song from their last record. Maybe that was 2 records ago. I don't know. Yeah. But that song I know kind of blew up a good bit.
Manifest is huge too. And that may also be in part because Luke Holland, the true. YouTube drummer covers it, and people seem to love that mix, and Luke Holland's a madman on the drums.
He is a madman. I think just to riff on Luke Holland for a second, I think my favorite project of his is that Jason Richardson self-titled or is it self-titled, that solo record he released?
Oh yeah.
Or is it just called
I'm honestly not.
It's something like that. But anyways, him and Luke Holland write some solid music. I'm pretty sure they have another one in the works, another record in the works. Keep an eye out for that in 2022. I think that's a definite possibility. But anyways, to stop being off track here, Starset. So
back to Starset.
Just for me, it did not crack my top 10. It honestly, for me, it just didn't stand out enough with a lot of the music that we listened to this year. It's just a little too generic for me, but that's not to take anything away from the music itself. It's definitely a record that I enjoy listening to. It's one that I feel like I can put on no matter who is around me, like sitting around the
Yeah.
fire, I feel like I could put that song on, that record on, and not scare anybody away. Where if I put Humanity's
that's
Last
definitely-
Breath on, I think I'm not going to have as many people coming back to visit me.
Yeah, you might get some weird glances.
So that's worth mentioning. You know, that it's an accessible band that's, you know, I can still enjoy, that I feel like most people
Yeah.
can enjoy in my circle.
This was definitely the more like poppy of the bands that made my list, and I do like them. I was honestly surprised at how high I ended up putting it on my list. Not that I, didn't like it or anything. It just, I found myself going back to it. Like the first time I listened through it was like, oh, this is good and stuff. But I didn't think it would make my top 10. And then I just kept going back and listening to it. And Icarus was the one song that really caught me. I've just gone back and listened to that song exclusively numerous times, and then even doing like another listen through of my top 10 to finalize. It was just like, yeah, this album is good. I like the sound of it, and it is definitely more poppy and not as heavy or anything as some of the other ones on my list, but it definitely did something different that the other ones on my list didn't do. And I think that's why I tried to mix my top 10. Wanted it to not all be basically bands that sound the same. And that was what I think got it into my top 8.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's, that mix of catchy, accessible rock with the heavy moments blended in. Honestly, that's the reason I like Starset in the first place. So,
yeah,
they delivered on that. So it's it's still a great Starset record.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. And I also just recently found out, like, I haven't been a huge follower of Starset. I've, enjoyed their music, but just kind of recently started getting into them. And I found out that they have a comic out as well
Really?
through Marvel. So I kind of want to check that out.
As a Coheed and Cambria fan, this intrigues me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I figured too. Is like, it almost gives me the Coheed feel that like they have this universe they're building, and then they have a comic that kind of ties into stuff.
I have
like
seen
that.
people on Coheed fan groups and things like that. Again, if you listen to the intro podcast that we put out, I'm a pretty big Coheed fan. But I've seen Starset mentioned a lot on those pages. As like a band who's kind of similar. They also have like sort of the space concept record type thing that they do. So I guess in a lot of ways, they have some similarities, maybe not fully musically, but conceptually. And if they're getting into comics and graphic novels now, we might see a Starset Coheed and Cambria tour here soon.
That would be sweet. But yeah, I think we can transition into the next.
Alrighty, let's
album here.
move on to the next record. For me, this band is one that I discovered back in 2018. They had a song called "Never Be the Same" that popped up on a playlist on Spotify of mine that it was either the like recommendation like playlist that they just generate, or maybe I was listening to some, the For You playlist, but I kind of fell off from them after that. That was really the only song I was interested in. And then I heard this song called Home, and that's the name of the record as well. The band is Siamese. And it just hit me in a different way. I mean, it was different. It almost like came off as like industrial, like that weird like synthy sample thing in the beginning that kind of comes back throughout the track. I normally don't like that in metal or in music in general. That's one of the reasons, to go back to Coheed, why I'm not a big fan of the Year of the Black Rainbow record. But for some reason in this instance, I connected with it a little bit. And I liked the chorus. It was super catchy, got stuck in my head pretty much every time I listened to it. I apologize to my wife because when a song gets stuck in my head, I tend to like walk around singing it extremely poorly, I'll add. So she has to deal with me whenever that happens, and this is one of those songs that happened with. But
well, hopefully she enjoys it too. So.
she might have at one point. She probably
Not
doesn't
anymore.
anymore. but like I wasn't too into. I went back and listened to their 2017 release. I think it's called Superhuman, and there was one song I liked off that record. But for the most part, I just wasn't into it. But then this record, Home, for me, there was just a run of songs that just it didn't seem like they were missing on. Like I was just like, this could be on my favorite, songs of 2021 playlist. Over and over and over again, almost 6 songs in a row. I feel like.
Yeah, I think for me it was like the opening track, few tracks, and the end few tracks were a little weaker, but then the middle chunk of songs, like back to back, were all very consistent.
Yeah.
I think that's ultimately why it didn't crack my top 10, was just because like the way it starts and ends was kind of like it almost like it ramped up in the middle and then kind of slowed down at the end. And there were just a few tracks in there that didn't really click with me. There were definitely some on there that I enjoyed, but ultimately, just being a huge year for music, I just couldn't end up putting it in my top 10.
Yeah, and it barely cracked mine at number 8, but there's something about, and some of the other moments on this record, something that Sleep Token also does, and they didn't crack my top 10, but I'm going to reference them here. They have some songs where it's almost just like isolated piano and vocal. And, it just slowly builds, and then it gets heavier as it gets to the end, and then it ends with like a breakdown or just something heavy. And there's a track on this record, Home, called Honest, that does that. It's an emotional roller coaster a bit.
Yeah.
And I enjoy songs like that. I definitely am a bigger fan of the heavier stuff in general, but when you throw a song like that on a record, often for me it becomes a highlight.
Yeah, I know those are like the divisive songs for metalheads. I think this is like when you throw a softer song, then people are like, oh no, they're going soft, and then people like hate on it. But then other people, it ends up being that like beacon song of like, wow, they can even do slow songs, like slower and softer songs.
Yeah.
Slow, relatively speaking, obviously.
Right.
It's not like smooth R&B or anything, but
Yeah, I think a band that they sort of remind me of a bit is like newer Veil of Maya to a degree, not necessarily full tilt, but to a degree. But they also do that like mainstream pop meets heavy music thing that Sleep Token does to a degree as well. So it's like
they give me a lot of Leprous vibes too.
In some songs, yeah, I can see that.
It's definitely not on every track, but there's some songs where I almost like forget that I'm not listening to Leprous.
Some like older Cole Congregation era Leprous for sure. I can see that. But yeah, this isn't necessarily my normal taste in music, this record, but it just struck a chord with me. Every song I liked, and there were only a handful of songs that I wasn't a major fan of.
It's almost fitting that our top 10 is like weird not normal albums for us in a weird not normal year.
It has been a weird year in many ways, but
yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of the reason that this cracked my top 10 and is where it is it was a super consistent record. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. I feel like I'm going to continue to say that a lot. I think it takes consistency sort of to a degree to make an album of the year playlist.
Yeah, definitely.
You can't just put out 1 or 2 great songs and have a bunch of trash the rest of the way through, phoning it in for the rest of it. But, honestly, that's the reason a good handful of records didn't make this list for me. But overall, this came in at number 8 for me.
And you were mentioning this album giving you some Sleep Token vibes, and that actually brings us to our next album on the list, Sleep Token, This Place Will Become Your Tomb. It was my number 7. I know you said it didn't crack your top 10.
It didn't. It probably came in like at 11 or 12. Though. It was really, really tight towards the end, and there were just some records I had to cut off. Leprous, it was one of them that barely didn't make my list. And Sleep Token is another one of those that sort of was a late scratch.
Yeah, there was definitely for me too, a lot of shuffling at the end of the year once all the albums were out, and going back through and re-listening to everything just to give them all a fair shot and not do like a recency bias of, oh, this is one's newer, so I like it more. I wanted to give everything a fair shot and try and kind of cram it all together. And yeah, Sleep Token. I was actually a few of the singles that when they were put out before the album, I was kind of concerned, not that they were going to be bad, but I was kind of concerned the route that they were going to take the album, just because a lot of the singles were much softer than their normal stuff. And I really like his vocals, but I love the just heavy, insane, like down-tuned chugginess of a lot of their songs. And
dare we say the gent?
Yes, the degent. And I was kind of wondering if they were going to go more poppy. And I definitely feel like this album did go more poppy. Like they have a lot more piano and a lot more sort of airy, atmospheric songs. But I think the way they're placed in the album here just fits really well. And listening to the album from front to back, it kind of eased my concern when I was listening to it of like, no, these fit well here. And this album is really strong as a whole. Like, it's another one that's kind of a roller coaster that, you get some real heavy stuff and then, the like Atlantic, the piano.
Yeah, that's that Siamese record we were just talking about. I was talking about that song Honest, how it, isolated piano and vocal and then it like gradually builds and gets heavier.
Yeah.
That's Atlantic on this record for sure. And
yeah,
definitely. It's honestly one of my favorite tracks on the record because of that. So it's strange, that sort of stands out to me in a record, but especially a heavier record. Not that the Sleep Token record fits that bill, but yeah, that Atlantic song is one of the highlights for me on that record.
Yeah, I actually had I went from being concerned that the way they were taking the album was not going to jive with me, but then I went from there to struggling to pick a favorite track on the album. I think Hypnosis was ultimately my favorite.
I would say that's mine as well.
And I know we were talking earlier and saying, oh, I hate when my favorite song on the track is like the first single or like
right.
the title song. It's not just, you don't hate it because, it's just like, oh, well, are you really a fan if your favorite
right.
song is the title track and stuff? But Alkaline is, just such a... Yeah. That was like the first single they put out and is so strong of a single.
It really is. It's stayed in my rotation pretty much since the single dropped. And that song is I would say Hypnosis is the strongest track on the record for me, but
I think so too.
Alkaline is definitely number 2.
Alkaline's music video is awesome too. Like,
it is pretty wild.
I don't generally, like, when I watch the music video, I watch it, but I'm not like absorbed by it. But that was one that I found myself of like, I could pay money to go to a theater and watch a full-length movie of whatever this is.
Yeah. What's going on? Not 100% sure, but I like it.
It gave me Matrix vibes, but then also had like weird horror elements.
Yeah.
And then like Vessel's just such a crazy guy that it's just like, what's going on in his head? Like, what is this video about? And
if we want to talk
stuff,
about other weird Sleep Token music videos, that one for The Love You Want or whatever.
I don't think I've seen that yet. I'll have to check that out.
He's like wielding a samurai sword, and there's like a weird like choreographed dance with other people. I think they might have swords. I don't. It's crazy. It's.
I'll have to check that out.
I never know what's going on in those videos, but it's it's captivating at least.
yeah. I think this overall was just such a solid album. At first when Alkaline was put out, I was like, oh, this is, if they go with this feel for the whole album, this is going to be my album of the year. And then they put out the other ones. I was like, oh, I'm a little concerned now. So I wasn't sure where it was going to land on my list, but I think number 7 is a pretty solid place for it.
I actually had similar thoughts whenever Alkaline dropped, that Sleep Token was gonna do big things for me this year. And number 11, I mean, that's nothing to scoff at, but they did not crack my top 10. I just want to mention one more thing about Sleep Token before we move on, about that song Hypnosis, because we were having a little bit of a conversation earlier, just sort of riffing on what they remind us of. And while they're typically more poppy, pop, ambient metal, whatever you want to call it. That track Hypnosis gives me crazy Chevelle, like Vitamin R leading us along vibes. And then you had mentioned Breaking Benjamin, like So Cold vibes.
Yeah, that rotary kind of like quick riff that
little intro riff, that like goes throughout,
Yeah, it gives me So Cold vibes there.
So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was interesting. We actually then went and listened to those songs, and we were just like, wow, this is actually pretty accurate. So
I love when you can. I mean, not that this is necessarily their inspiration writing that song, but I love when I listen to music and I can get vibes from other bands, and then it makes me go down this rabbit hole and I start like re-listening to bands I haven't listened to in years, or, maybe even discover other related bands that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
I love how music makes you do that. And
getting inspiration from songs to either go back and re-listen to things from your past or even discover something new, for sure.
Yeah, I think we ready to move on and discuss our next album?
We talked enough about Sleep Token here. Let's go ahead and move on. This was a record that got released earlier in the year, and for me, when it came out, I felt like it was going to be a strong like album of the year contender from the get-go. I bought the vinyl. I did all. I was just like, this is going to be one of the ones we're talking about here at the end, and here we are. So
it stayed despite all of the albums it released, and this being an early one, it stayed on the list.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Era, and that's their self-titled record that they dropped here at the beginning of the year. It came in at number 7 on my list.
It was number 5 on mine.
Yeah, so I mean, with it coming out earlier in the year, I definitely did have to go back, re-listen to some stuff, but there were some songs like Vanish Canvas and Eidolon, I believe is how that's pronounced.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's Eidolon or Eidolon.
It's something like that. Those songs have stayed in my rotation pretty much all year. I have an album of the year or a song of the year playlist that I put together every year that I typically listen to on shuffle whenever I'm driving or working out or whatever. And those songs have been on that list all year. So I've definitely listened to my favorites, I'll say, throughout the whole year, but going back and listening to the record as a whole was actually a nice treat towards the end of the year to just be like, oh, this record was pretty damn good.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there are a lot of songs on this album that just the first time listening through it was just kind of like, oh man, this is my favorite track, and then you get to the next one, it's like, oh no, maybe this one. So it was another one that was kind of hard to pick a favorite. I think Eidolon or Eidolon, however you pronounce it, that was my favorite on the album. But Scorpion Hymn, Gungrave, Snowblood, all are just great.
Vanish Canvas.
Yeah, Vanish Canvas is good too. Honestly, there's not really one that's bad on there, and they all. The album does a lot of things well. I think it goes well with being heavy and atmospheric. Kind of, that's I think the running theme of the.
That's what we're into, folks. It's what we're into.
We like what we like.
But I just think Era for me is sort of really starting to separate themselves in the metalcore genre. And I'm sure there are people that'll disagree with that, but
that's just right.
their mix of cleans and harsh, heavy screams, whatever the hell you want to call that. I'm just going to call them harsh vocals, as well as they have technical guitars, but then they have the chuggy, like breakdown style guitars, and it's just kind of what I look for when I listen to metalcore these days. I want that mix. Some bands are going, full clean, not as much heavy stuff. Some bands are sticking to, heavy stuff with mixed in cleans every once in a while. I just feel like their mix for me is kind of ideal, like the ideal metalcore mix that I look for.
Yeah, I agree with that. Metalcore can be very like samey and generic with some bands, and I feel like in a flood of metalcore bands, Era stands out because they do so many things so well, and they do the chuggy, heavy stuff, but then they have cool melodic riffs, and the vocals go heavy, but then they also have good cleans, at least in my opinion. Some people don't like the cleans and stuff, but I mean, I feel like in metalcore you kind of expect there to be some clean vocals,
at least to a degree.
Yeah, and I think they do all of those things really well. And I mean, I've enjoyed all of their albums to date, some more than others, but this one is definitely.
This is probably my favorite Era record.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's, you know, they have a lot of good ones, but this one is just like a different level for them. They're stands out of all of their other albums.
If I had to pick a favorite track on this record, I think you basically said it was tough for you to do so, but I would probably say Vanished Canvas. And I wanted to bring up and just discuss, you know, they re-released that song towards the end of the year, with Courtney LaPlante from Spiritbox.
Yeah.
And she just has sort of like a small vocal role at the end there, but, did you listen to that? How'd you feel about that?
I did, and I enjoy that. I mean, I don't think Courtney can put out bad music.
I think everybody in the metal community is starting to feel that way. I think she, you know, her list of features is growing by the second. So
yeah, she just, I mean, the whole Spiritbox band is just animals.
They're one of the biggest stories of this year for sure. They kind of went from zero to hero seemingly. Not that they were making bad music before.
They were just not as big of a name, and like now they're on.
The Mara Effect suite of songs is fantastic. If you've not listened to those, if your only introduction to Spiritbox is Eternal Blue, go back and listen to those songs because they're fantastic. But
I was so glad I was able to pick up the single collection on vinyl before it sold out. I think there were 4 left when I went to check out. So
But I think we'll save some of this because we might be talking about Spiritbox a little bit later. But
hint,
but yeah, for me, I don't know how much her vocal at the end of that re-release elevated the song for me, but it sort of reminded me how much I enjoyed that song, seeing it drop again.
I definitely I agree that it didn't change the song as a whole. But I thought it was a cool thing to do and like re-release and feature her and just like get some different sound on it a little bit. And I thought that was cool. And I kind of wish bands would do that more. Like, it's neat to just
like the intermingling.
And just like re-record a song and feature a different musician and just have sort of like boost each other up of, oh, well, now they show up on each other's Spotify's if you search them and you know, kind of get the search engine optimization for your music.
Cast a wider net.
Yeah, I like that idea, and you know, it's cool to see. Oh, these bands, you know, they're friends, I guess.
Yeah.
To want to work together and stuff, and that's pretty cool.
Let's see a tour in the future.
That would be a sick tour, Spiritbox and Era.
But
I would, for sure.
But yeah, so you know, just to sort of summarize, Era was. That self-titled record was fantastic. Number 7 for me, number 5 for you, and it sort of survived the test of, you know, releasing early in the year and sort of it stayed relevant for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's impressive that when did it release in, was it like February?
I think it was February.
Yeah, it was early in the year, so the fact that it stood the test of time
absolutely.
Being this long year,
and how crazy the releases were this year. That's something to be said for that for sure. But let's go ahead and move off of Era and this next record. I am shocked that it didn't crack your top 10. It's a little. I'm a little surprised.
Are you hurt?
I'm not hurt. I'm not hurt per se. I'm a little surprised. But
I'm honestly surprised as well. You can introduce the album.
Yeah, so one of my favorite bands right now for sure, Silent Planet. They released a record called Iridescent, and I thought it was fantastic. It came in at number 6 for me. And before we even talk about the record, I just want to throw out that Garrett Russell is an absolute gem of a human being.
He is, yeah.
He is one of the nicest guys in the scene. And probably one of my favorite musicians in general.
Yeah, the whole band seems really nice, but I don't know, Garrett just seems like he's constantly reaching out to fans and just like very interactive. And
I've seen them live twice. Once I saw them with the Contortionist in Sky Harbor. I actually drove to Baltimore for that show.
ooh, that's a good
And
that's a good
then
lineup.
and then once actually with you, we went and saw them with August Burns Red and Silverstein.
Yeah, I was trying to remember who all was
Yeah.
in that lineup because
There might have been another band, but those are the three I remember.
yeah, was that with After the Burial?
No.
Oh, I see. I saw two shows. I saw that one, and then there was another show that I saw maybe like
okay.
3 weeks later,
Gotcha.
and they were at the same venue, so I
Yeah.
kind of mixed the lineups
Yeah.
together.
But at each of those shows that I saw them at, Garrett hung out after the show, spent time talking to me, like actually, asked my name, asked about my life, like seemed genuinely interested about me as a person. And you don't really see that much in I mean, I guess you see it a decent amount in metal. I think some of the metal musicians are just genuinely nice people, but
I think it's definitely more common than the more poppy music.
Right.
Like they do more interactive things with.
but I feel like he goes above and beyond even for the scene.
I do too.
And he interacts with everybody, social media, whatever, and I ordered a hat. I'm actually wearing it right now. And he wrote me like a little note. Like it's just the little things, that add
Didn't
up.
it come with like candy too?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I got like a lollipop and a Tootsie Roll and
That's pretty awesome. Like a little goodie bag and a handwritten note.
yeah. But it's it's things like that just it makes you want to like the band, and it helps that they also put out bangers. So
Yeah. This album was good. It didn't crack my top 10 like you said, but it was really solid. And it's not that I disliked it. It's just the other ones were
Right.
stronger
Just
contenders in my opinion.
for me, it's just his style, Garrett's style in his vocal style, his lyricism. Like he's a poet, and he researches to write his songs. Like it's crazy the effort that he puts into writing. But just the way, like his vocal style, the like almost spoken word, like
I do really
slash
like that.
metals, like that growly like spoken word thing. That I love it. It's great. It's unique in my opinion for the scene.
I agree with that. He definitely has like his own vocals. You can tell that it's him,
And he gets featured on some songs too, and even if he's not given credit, as soon as he there are some songs on Spotify where it doesn't say featuring Garrett Russell, but he's on the track because of his vocal style.
yeah, he's featured in a song on the latest Norma Jean album.
Yes.
Yeah. It was just like listening to it without knowing that. I was like, wait a minute, Garrett's on here.
That's actually my favorite track on that record
Yeah, I
too.
think is it Anna? I think.
Yeah.
Is the
Yep.
or Anna? I'm not sure.
Yeah. But that style of vocal just for me is unique to the scene, and it stands out and it separates them for me. I mean, I guess you would consider them metalcore,
Yeah.
especially their last two records with how much clean vocals they do, which I know is controversial, I think, to a degree, but for me, I think it's great. I actually enjoy it a lot. Probably my favorite track on the record is Translate the Night.
That is a good track.
It sounds like it could have been on like The Night God Slept, one of their older records, which is one of my favorite records. They actually did like a redux of it, I think, recently.
Oh, okay.
And it has like Native Blood on it, which is a great song.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't too familiar with the names of the actual albums.
Yeah.
They're one of those bands that I just kind of shuffle their discography on Spotify and don't really look at the names just because most of their songs are just consistently good.
Yeah.
So I don't really pay attention to the album names too much
Yeah,
for them.
they're,
It's just like put them on shuffle and let it go.
Yeah, they're fantastic. But yeah, that song for me just sort of fits in with some of the older stuff that sort of got me into Silent Planet to begin with. And then they do a lot of the newer stuff. There's a song called Till We Have Faces as well on that record that I gravitate towards.
That's a good track too.
There's a little bit of like an industrial rock feel to that track, which again, I think I mentioned this earlier. There's going to be a lot of repetitive themes here apparently, but I didn't used to enjoy that style. I need to go back and listen to Year of the Black Rainbow again, I think. It's kind of where
You're rethinking your
But
your whole life.
But I don't know, it just clicked with me. It has some samples in that song and effects and stuff that I wouldn't have normally liked that I think just worked with the track. So
yeah, my favorite track on there was Panopticon.
great song. Yeah, that was one of the singles.
Yeah, I being that guy that picks the single. I liked that one. Seemed like particularly heavy on the album, and I thought it kind of stood out from the others because of that. And not that it just like, oh, pick music for the sake of being heavy, but I just like it was just kind of like the lighthouse in the album that stood out to me, and I really enjoyed that track the most. But you know, the two songs that you had mentioned as well are solid tracks, and this was another album. It's a common theme of these top 10. It's just hard to pick a favorite song.
I want to shout out the song Terminal as well, because I know this was a little bit different for them. There was a degree of I think Garrett was doing like clean vocals. Like I think he was singing. I think that's one of the few times that he's done that on a track. Maybe I'm wrong. I think I listened to an interview with him where he talked about that. He's also playing guitar a little bit. If you watch the music video, he's playing guitar, and you know, I think they stepped a little bit out of their comfort zone on that track. There's a lot of clean vocals, but overall, I think it's a highlight for me on that record. I really enjoyed that song.
Yeah, that is a good track too. There's really not any, you know, bad tracks on it. Like, I think they're pretty consistently good throughout. But those, for me, Panopticon was just the standout one.
Listen to Translate the Night. Listen to Terminal. Listen to Till We Have Faces.
Just go back and
listen to the whole record. Really, it's great. It's great. But yeah, so that's where that one ends for me, number 6, and super strong record.
I think so we'll move into the next one here, which was pretty strong on both of our lists. Idola, The Architect.
A little stronger on mine.
Yeah, a little bit stronger. For me, it was number 6.
I had them at number 3. They cracked the top 3 for me. I did not anticipate that to be the case. It's not typical. Like they sort of fall under that Dance Gavin Dance umbrella a little bit, and
definitely have that.
And I'm not a major fan of Dance Gavin Dance. Not that I don't like them. It's just they're not, you know, one of my premier bands. They're not a band that I necessarily seek out all that much. But yeah, this record really, really clicked with me. I thought the first six songs in a row, I was just like, can this album do anything wrong? Like, it just was banger after banger for me. Honestly, the first 6 songs are all tracks that could have made my top 2021 like song playlist. Like they were great.
Yeah, this one I actually for the other albums I was able to narrow down and begrudgingly decide a contender track that was my favorite, but this one I just couldn't. So I just kind of listed them both. But I guess if I now on the spot, if I had to pick, I'd say Mutual Fear was probably my favorite song on the album. Empty Gardens was pretty good, and I forget what the other one was called. I actually deleted it from my Google Docs. It was something Tongues.
Forgotten Tongues.
Forgotten Tongues, yeah.
That's a good song too. Empty Gardens was my favorite track. It was tough for me to pick a favorite track as well. But I've said this before, probably not on the podcast since this is a very new thing, but I've definitely said this before to you. Whenever there's just sort of a break in a song where it sort of shifts to like a harmonized vocal, often like male female harmonized vocal, for me that's I love that. Like I'll give another example of that happening. Cryptodira on their Devil's Despair record, the last 2 tracks, Negation Consumes it, Affirmation and Negation Consumes Itself, I believe are the names. They do that on that track, and on those tracks, and it's the highlight of that record for me. So Empty Gardens has that happen in this song as well. Or your Empty Gardens, it happens in that song as well. And highlight of the record for me.
Yeah, I enjoy the harmonized vocals too. I think there's something with that. It just like gives you that extra feel, like you get more absorbed into the song when you have.
It adds another layer that you weren't expecting. It kind of comes out of nowhere. When you're layering the instruments, you're layering all the effects and whatever. And whenever all of a sudden now you're layering like a different vocal in there, it elevates it a bit for me. I don't know.
It's like almost goosebump inducing when you weren't expecting it and it just comes out of nowhere. You're like, "Ooh, where did this come from?"
Exactly.
Yeah, that song. Those were like the three that was hard for me to pick on there. I think I ended up going with Mutual Fear just from some of the riffs that were in there really stuck with me, and that was a track that when I went back to listen to the album, I found myself clicking, like going to that, gravitating towards that song. So
yeah, I honestly like the way the record opens too. Hidden Worship into Counterfeit Shrines. That's a highlight for me. Those two songs. Counterfeit Shrines for a while was my favorite song on the record.
That is a good track too.
So it's tough. It's tough to pick one moment or one record or one song on the record, but yeah, this record was super consistent. Song after song, just fantastic.
It's funny. I'm not sure if it's the same with you, but the way I found out about them is with them touring with Crypto Deer and Intervals. I had never heard of them prior to this. I had actually seen their album when I think it was on Rise Records like record sale.
Yeah.
I had seen the album artwork, but didn't know who the band was. And then seeing that they were on the bill with Intervals and Crypto Deer, I gave them a listen to, get a feel for their sound and everything, and was like, holy cow, I can't believe I've never listened to them before. And
yeah, it was really sad, honestly, to see them drop from that tour.
Yeah.
But Seder filled in. And,
and Seder did not disappoint.
No, that was another sort of discovery from that tour, because I agree. I think I had heard of Idola before that. I knew that they were under the Dance Gavin Dance umbrella. Not being a major fan of Dance Gavin Dance, I may have listened to a song or two and just sort of wrote them off. This was definitely before they released this record. It wasn't until that tour got announced with Intervals and Crypto Deer and Thank You Scientist that I fully checked them out, and I'm glad I did, because they came in at number 3 for me.
Yeah, definitely. If you haven't heard of Idola, definitely check it out if you're into the Dance Gavin Dance.
But even if you're not, if you're into just
I guess
metal,
to your
that
point,
metalcore, because I'm not a big Dance Gavin Dance fan. I'm gonna try not to say that anymore on this. But some of their stuff I like. I own some of their records on vinyl. I've seen them live multiple times. I don't hate them.
Yeah, it's just not the.
It's like Good Tiger
go-to.
for me. It's like Good Tiger for me. I've seen them like live 3 or 4 times.
It's funny because I love them and I haven't seen them live yet. And
yeah, I just don't. I don't spin them on a regular basis. That's really about it. But this Idola record I do spin on a regular basis, so check it out.
Yeah, definitely. Next up on our list, we've mentioned them a couple times now. Spiritbox, Eternal Blue. It landed in my number 3, so definitely a very, very strong album for me.
Yeah, I had them at number 4. Anything top 5 is pretty darn good. Honestly, everything in this top 10 that we've talked about today, all great records, but this one kind of got a lot of hype, a lot of acclaim in a lot of different circles. You're seeing them with Forbes articles and Billboard articles, and she's interviewing people and being interviewed by big names, and they're often on Sirius XM, whether it's Octane or Liquid Metal. They're all over the dang place right now. Yeah,
they've definitely exploded with this record, and rightfully so. I mean, I feel like it's definitely sound wise not similar, but I think it's like how we talked about Sleep Token being kind of more approachable with the softer songs and the more poppy, and like when we talked about Starset, I feel like they kind of did that here too, where they definitely have really heavy stuff, but they also have some more poppy things. Like there was one song on the track or on the album kind of gave me almost like Post Malone vibes, like the flow of it.
Oh,
like
which song is that? Is that Halcyon?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Halcyon. I'm blanking on the name of it now that I'm on the spot.
Well, while you're trying to think of that, there's to riff off of the excessiveness or the accessibility, Constance. You know, I could see like family members of mine, you know, even like my grandmother, which, you know, if you've ever seen the music video, it's a little whatever. But like, I could see people like, you know, who don't listen to metal being able to listen to that song and enjoy it. Where Holy Roller, not so much. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a good mix on that record.
I think it's the Summit. I want to say
Summit.
that.
Okay.
Was the
like do 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 do.
Yeah. The flow of the song, like it definitely.
I apologize for doing that on this podcast.
Yeah, don't sing again. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think there's so many good tracks on here, and they have that level of, you know, Holy Roller being heavy as hell,
which is strangely my least favorite track on the record.
I think I'd have to agree, which is funny because, you know,
it's probably the most popular track on the record for some reason. Didn't something else was it Constance or Circle With Me just won like #1 song or something like that?
Yeah, it was Sirius XM.
Yeah.
I forget if it was Octane or Liquid Metal, but one of them gave it the track, like awarded them.
That's probably my favorite track on the record is Circle With Me. So not to fit the mainstream opinion there, but it's probably the one I listen to the most. Halcyon as well.
Halcyon, that's my favorite, and
I assume that's how that's pronounced. Again, a lot of these titles are a little, you know, a little below my education level, but I
think. It goes from Halcyon into Circle With Me, and I think it's just like a really good chunk. And then it finishes with Constance. Like that end block of the album is just so good. And it's hard to pick, but I think Halcyon is my favorite, and Circle With Me is probably a close second.
Yeah. I said below my education level. I meant above my education. That's just showing my education level. But
you're gonna get all the comments.
I don't care. But yeah, the Summit, great song. Circle With Me, great song. It's just the mix that they do on their records. The mix of, you know, the heavy and the not as heavy. You know, make you do the stank face to like make you want to cry. Like there's just it's a nice sort of ride whenever you can have all those different types of feelings and emotions when listening to a record. And for me, there was a lot of hype because some of the singles that they put out that actually didn't end up making the record. Blessed Be being one of those.
Blessed
Rule of
Be
Nines.
Is probably one of my top 5 favorite songs of all time. I love that song so much.
Hearing those songs and then hearing Holy Roller, for me, I was like, well, at least it's going to have those other 2 songs on that record. And then when I found out it wasn't going to, my like expectations for where this was going to land, where this record was going to land for me sort of went from absolutely like sky high to like, I don't know how this is going to go. And it ended up not disappointing. Honestly, if you replaced a couple songs on that record with Blessed Be and Rule of Nines, this was the album of the year.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Blessed Be is, I just love that song. And that's another one where the music video stuck with me. Like, a lot of times they don't, but it just gave me that Handmaid's Tale vibe.
I was going to say that, like the Handmaid's Tale style.
And that was actually like right when me and my wife had started watching Handmaid's Tale, and we were getting really into it and enjoying it. And then I watched that video and was like, wow, feels like extended universe Handmaid's Tale and stuff. So I just really enjoyed that track. So it's a bummer that it didn't make the album, but you know, they ended up pressing the singles album and put it on there, so they appeased me. Thank you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think this is an album where it's not a concept album, at least to my knowledge.
Yeah, I don't get full concept album vibes.
But it is one that I think the placement of the tracks just, it adds to it if you listen to it from front to back.
Yeah, it flows nice.
Yeah, there were some singles like as they were putting them out that I enjoyed, but was like, oh, I don't know, like depending on how this album, how it goes, they sounds like they're going with a slightly different sound than the other singles and albums that they've put out, and listening to it from front to back, holy cow, the placement of these tracks just lend so well together. This album is a damn near masterpiece.
It really is. I feel like they could have did a little more, just a little bit more. Like I said, honestly, if you replaced a couple of those, slightly lesser tracks on that record with Blessed Be and Rule of Nines, this is a completely different conversation. But
Yeah.
still extremely solid record, front to back. Definitely a roller coaster. Definitely one of those records that for the best experience, you want to listen to it front to back, but you could still split out those songs and put them on playlists, and when they come on, they're still just as impactful. So that's why it came in at number 4 for me.
Yeah, I think that was my number 3 and definitely earned its spot. I was debating about it and putting it even higher, but the next couple albums we talk about will understand where I'm coming from, hopefully.
Yeah.
Why it ended up 3 and not my album of the year.
Well, you still had it beat this next record, which I'm actually a little surprised.
I'm very surprised too, honestly.
Because this was probably the record I was most hyped about this year, as soon as it was announced, and especially given the gravity of the announcement and the name.
Hint, hint.
I was like, this has to, you don't have a choice. If you're going to name your record this, it has to be a flawless record front to back. And the record we're talking about here is Colors 2, Between the Buried and Me. Colors being such an iconic record. I mean, if you listen to metal and you don't covet that record, I question your sanity.
I think some people are into that sort of counterculture thing now, that because it's so good and people are like, Colors is so good, that there are people that are just like, shut up about Colors already.
Yeah,
And
it's overhyped. It's not. That record is amazing. One of the best progressive metal records ever written.
I definitely agree with that. It's definitely one of my favorite. And like you said, with a name like Colors 2, I was very hyped for it, but also kind of going into it cautiously optimistic. That
how do you follow that?
Yeah, how do you follow up Colors with Colors 2?
You follow it up with The Great Misdirect, and that record is equally masterful. But anyways, Colors 2, let's talk about that. So Between the Buried and Me releases records that are meant to be consumed front to back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough to, especially now. I mean, the earlier records, Silent Circus, Alaska, whatever, you can split those records up. You can listen to Selkies by itself. You can listen to Alaska by itself without needing a lead in.
Yeah, a lot of their songs on their last few albums they clearly just start off like they're left over from the previous
they're
track.
continuations. It's almost like, you need the track before it to fully grasp the track you're listening to. Yeah. So it's like,
then you just end up backtracking from the end to the beginning at that point, because you're like, well, this one leaves off, I need to go back, and you might as well just start at the beginning.
So that's probably the only knock that I would ever give of Between the Buried and Me record, and that does not take away from how masterful the record is, doesn't take away from how fantastic the music is, how epic the music is. It's tough sometimes to just pick one track out and have that, put it on a playlist, because, when you go from one song right into the Between the Buried and Me track, hopefully somehow that leads into it, because if not, it comes out of nowhere. Yeah. That's not to say I still don't do that, because I do, but yeah, so Colors 2 came in at number 2 on my list.
It was my number 4, just slightly below Spirit Box. It was a tough battle.
It was damn close to being the album of the year for me. I think it is just an epic roller coaster. We've used that term multiple times today too, but honestly, how else do you describe a Between the Buried and Me record? I mean, it's got your crazy, it sounds like you're in a heavy metal circus, and then all of a sudden there's a a little like jazz riff, and then they're, it's Between the Buried and Me. It's what they do. And there's just so many moments on this record that, they had that track where they got multiple drummers. They got the guy from Dream Theaters on that track. There's like three. I forget everybody but it's just like when you first listen to it, before they tell you that, before they release the music video, you just think that Blake's just going nuts. And apparently he plays all of the parts live, which I can't wait to see.
That would be sweet to watch him.
But there's just so many moments on this record that make you remember why you love Between the Buried and Me to begin with. And it fits the name. Colors too. It definitely lives up to the name.
I enjoy that it's sort of like almost video gamey, that they have so many Easter eggs for
the
Colors
callbacks.
One.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's cool and kind of like lets you nerd out. It's sort of like how Marvel movies have Easter eggs for other movies and teasers and stuff. It just like callbacks to Colors One and stuff. So they did make it a sequel. It feels like a spiritual successor to Colors One, and I think that's part of the reason I loved it so much going into it, and it feels like a sequel. Put it up there on my list, and there were so many awesome tracks on it. I think my favorite was Never Seen Future Shock.
Isn't that the longest track on the record too? I feel like
it's one of, if it's not the
second longest. Human as Hell is longer.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, that song's awesome. I really enjoy Bad Habits, and then honestly, the intro track, gives you that nice little like piano lead in with the epic clean vocal. I feel like that's something that you've come to know and love from Between the Buried and Me lately, is just their introduction into a record is always like, it's setting the scene essentially.
Yeah, it definitely, I think it's strong from front to back, and like you said about it being a concept album and you have to kind of listen to it from front to back. It's great that every track is good, so that when you what is a 90-minute album, right? Something around there.
It is like 80 minutes.
Yeah, so it's a long one, and you listen to it from front to back, so it can be kind of an undertaking to listen to. Because
that's probably the only reason it's number 2 for me, honestly, is that the work speaks for itself, how epic the music is, but you really gotta commit.
Yeah, I think for me that's it too, and I hate to knock it for being a concept album. Like, it's not a, I guess, fair way to, but we make the decisions with our favorites.
That's true.
And I think for me, it's just because you kind of need to listen to all of them, that I don't end up playing the songs as much as others that are standalone tracks that you can just listen to on the go. I'm seldomly driving for 80 consecutive minutes. So I, would hate to put on an album and then stop and then, the next day come back and finish it.
Right.
So I think that's part of the reason for me that I just haven't listened to it quite as much as I have some other albums. And I think that's ultimately why I ended up putting Spirit Box above it. It was a hard decision to make, but one I had to do. So
yeah, no, I agree. And I want to sort of specify too that I don't want them to stop doing what they do.
Oh no, absolutely.
Like, I feel like the way that they write music, the way that they write their records, like, it's just kind of what you come to know and love about Between the Buried and Me. So, I don't want them to change that style at all, because I just think it works for their music. Sure, maybe we're not listening to individual songs as frequently as we'll listen to individual songs off of other records, but I always think it's a treat whenever I have the time to, if it's a slow work day or something, or if I'm working from home and I'm on my laptop and, have the time before a meeting or something to listen to an entire record. I love being able to put on Colors 2, Coma, Ecliptic, even like that record doesn't get enough.
I love that one. So
credit.
much of the 80s synthwave feel to that album.
But also a great misdirect, which is probably one of my favorite records of all time. I actually like it more than Colors. I know that's kind of a hot take.
Ooh, shots fired.
But yeah, I think it's a treat whenever I have the time to do that. It's something that I look forward to. So I enjoy. Sure, it's not as accessible the way that they write, but I don't want them to stop doing it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And another thing I like too is they do all those like weird sound bites. Like they have the horse. And they have like the cartoon head bonk noise.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Bonk. And then there's the like sort of in my head what I picture like Fred Flintstone with his legs going.
Oh yeah.
Like kind of thing. And they're just like it's odd, but
the stuff that they do, like I want to sit in on a recording session when they're like,
it would be so cool
doing these different things,
yeah,
and the things that are making these different effects, and like I just and like where they come up with these ideas. It's just like, well, we're gonna have a horse neigh in this. Like where'd you come up with that?
Why?
Like why does that make sense to you? And it works, and it's hilarious, and it's awesome, and but why?
Yeah, I think it's one of the only albums that I actually I both enjoyed it but also got laughs out of.
Right.
It's like it's not a comedy album and it's not like they're, trying to be Weird Al and do parodies or anything, but just those little sound bites were kind of funny little things in the middle of an otherwise just banger song.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that album is just very strong.
Yeah, so overall, number 2 on my list. I could talk about Between the Buried and Me all day. So,
yeah, me too.
One of the first progressive metal bands that I think either of us got into, and
yeah, it was definitely one of mine.
Just consistently on my rotation for sure.
Yeah, so I guess now we're down to kind of our number one selections, which they differ. So
we got 2 more records left to talk about. Your number 1 and my number 1. They also did make each of our top 5, but we do differ here. And,
yeah, do you want to go into my number 1 first?
I think we should do your number 1 first.
So my number 1 album was Vola Witness.
Great record.
If you never heard of Vola, they're awesome. In Mazes is also a fantastic album. So if you've not heard of them, go check that album out. Witness is very different. I mean, I guess being in progressive metal kind of lends to that being different, but just they're very different than the rest of my top 10, and they're almost, I guess, more prog rock than metal. I mean, they definitely have some more metal.
They kind of strike both chords, I think. It depends on the song you're listening to. I mean, it's similar to like The Contortionist, how they'll have a song that's just down the middle prog rock, but then they have other songs, Language, that thrive. Songs that you would consider progressive metal. So it's a mix. It's a mix.
Yeah, they kind of straddle the line in between the two.
I would say they're definitely closer to prog rock, though. I agree with that.
Yeah, but this one came out earlier in the year, and this is another one that was like, oh, this album is fantastic as I was listening through it, but
buy the record.
Yeah, definitely. But as it went on, I was like, I don't know if this will stay in my top list, but just every song on it is good. I would say my favorite is Stone Leader Falling Down, but then, all of the singles they released beforehand with Head Mounted Sideways, Straight Lines, 24 Light Years, all are super good songs on the album as well.
Yeah, so they come in as number 1 for you, number 5 for me. But like you said, the singles, Straight Lines, Head Mounted Sideways, 24 Light Years, all still in my rotation today. So they probably could have been higher for me, but
they should be.
But number 5 is still high, and
yeah, no, definitely.
And My favorite song's probably Straight Lines, which was one of the singles, so I'm going to be that guy this time. But,
That's all right.
it's just, for me, that's the one I connected with the most, but I also liked Freak and Future Bird, two great songs.
Those songs are great too. I really like the lyrics are, I'm sure they have like meaning behind them that I don't understand, but Inside Your Fur's lyrics were kind of strange, but the song itself is awesome. I love the cadence to it, and the instrumentation is fantastic, and the vocals are also awesome. Just I don't know what the lyrics mean.
Right. Their vocal style, at times, it almost sounds like they're shouting into a can. Like, I don't know, like, it's definitely like an effect, and there's definitely a better way to put that, because it makes it sound like it's bad, but it's a different, like, it's not to the level of a band like Astronoid, who does that weird effect to their vocal. It's nowhere remotely close to that, but like, it's a super small fraction of that to me in certain songs.
Yeah, maybe it's like the synth. It's
I like it. I'm not, and again, I really like Astronoid too. Check them out if you've not listened to them. But it's just, it's different. It's different, and
yeah.
I connect to it in some songs. In some songs, it kind of, that's what sort of distances me from listening to it over and over again. But Straight Lines for me is just, that song's a banger.
Yeah, that's probably like the close second for me between after Stone Leader Falling Down. I feel like probably the most divisive song that you probably either love or hate it would be These Black Claws.
Yeah, I did want to talk about that song. So I like it.
I do too.
It's different. So a rapper named Shaman is featured on the track if you've not listened to it. He does a verse. I guess he takes the whole second verse, really.
Yeah.
And to me, it's cool. I mean, it fits the song, and they even do like a sort of a transition, like after his verse, where it's like one straw in the drain or whatever. Like, it's kind of like, it's pretty cool.
Back.
Like, it's a cool, and he sort of does it in the same cadence and like almost same vocal style as Shaman's sort of like rapped lyric. I felt like the only thing that sort of lowered the track for me was, it didn't seem like Shaman delivered his verse with enough energy. Like, maybe there didn't, I don't know. Maybe people disagree with me. Maybe that's what he sounds like all the time. I don't listen to his music, so I don't know. But
yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Is like I've never listened to Shaman outside of this, so that may be like his sound. Yeah. That's the way he delivers like all of his songs, but I do think that was initially where I had landed, was like, I don't know if I do or don't like this song, because the delivery was just kind of different, and it's like, I'm not sure how I feel, but having listened to this album probably 15, 20 times this year, it was actually, I think I had 700 minutes listened to this album on my Spotify, but then I also have it on vinyl too, right. So God knows how many hours I spent. Keep track of that. Yeah. So after having listened to the song probably 20 plus times, I've landed on the side that I do like it, and I think it's unique, and it's the most unique track I think out of any of the albums I listened to this year. I definitely wouldn't say that everybody who listens will necessarily like it, but I would say check it out and see what you think.
And it's not even just because there's, it features a rap artist. That's not the only thing that makes it unique. It's the whole song, the whole delivery style, like the ding ding ding, like that weird like intro sample that they do, like, how it goes from heavy to like, it's a unique track. So overall, honestly, it's definitely worth a listen. It definitely grew on me as well.
Yeah, I think it's weird that they have, a rap artist featured, and you would think like, oh, metal and rap, so new metal, but it doesn't land in that new metal category, in my opinion. Like, it's its own thing entirely. Yeah. That it doesn't you know, if
still
you
fits
listen
the
to
record.
this, yeah, if you listen to us describing it and like, oh, it's new metal, it's,
No.
I mean, I guess maybe technically it is, but it doesn't sound like what you would think, you know, Korn and like
Right. No. Not at
like
all.
POD, Linkin Park kind of
Right.
stuff. But yeah, that was my number one album, and
It's
I
a
just
good, it's a
continued
good
to
number
listen.
one record. It is a good number one record. I do think they could have been a little higher on my list. But
Is it
my number one here goes kind of against the grain a bit. I feel like for people who listen to metal records, mostly metal. And the fact that this record came in at your number 2 as well, I think sort of validates me for having it at number 1. I don't know if anybody out there has ever listened to the band Delta Sleep, but they released one of the best albums of the year, maybe of the last few years.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like they're a very consistent band where all of their albums are good, but they've never been like the top of my list of bands.
Yeah.
But just in a year of awesome albums, this one making my number 2 and it being, you know, very different than the other ones. I was honestly surprised at how high it was too. I mean, I really enjoy their music, but I was thinking it would land somewhere more in like the 10 range.
Right.
It's like the 5 to 10 area, and was very pleasantly surprised listening to it. And it's one of those albums that I go back to continuously as well.
Absolutely. So just to recap here fully, the record we are talking about is Delta Sleep's Spring Island record. If you've not listened to it yet, check it out. So Delta Sleep for me sort of first came on the map with their Ghost City record back in 2018. That's sort of when they first became... I mean, I've heard songs like Camp Adventure and things like that from some of their older records. But Ghost City was the first one to ever crack a top 10 album of the year list for me back in 2018. I think I had it at like 3 or 4. Like, it was pretty high. And that's kind of what led to me even exploring their discography a lot more. Think like bands like Deer Hunter and Manchester Orchestra and bands, you know, that are, you know, strictly basically prog rock. That's kind of where Delta Sleep fits in. But yeah, the record that they just put out, by far album of the year for me. It's one of those records that you can listen to from front to back, and I do frequently. Matt said he was at like 700 and some minutes played for that Vola record. I think I was in the 1300 range for this Delta Sleep record.
Jeez. And that came out in October, right?
Yeah, it's not been out super long, so it's just, I don't know. There's something about it that clicks for me. I said sort of in our intro podcast as well that in my older age, I'm starting to connect a lot more with like the prog rock side more than the prog metal side. I think this kind of is evidence of that. But the thing I like about Delta Sleep is they give you a lot of those metal elements, like without being heavy. You know what I mean? Like they're not over distorting their guitars. They're not doing a lot of harsh vocals, barely any. I think maybe he kind of screams once on the record.
Yeah, he kind of doesn't really scream. It's almost like he just gets into that like gravelly, distorted voice.
Like almost like that, like punk hardcore a little bit, but barely ever. Don't think of this band as like a punk hardcore band. They do not fit that mold. But But there's elements of all of those things, and I think that's why I sort of gravitate towards it. You know, they have the breakdown style riffs, but not distorted. Like it's interesting the way that they sort of compose their music, and I love it. It pulls me right in. I mean, it strikes all the chords of a fan of metal, but as a fan of bands like Coheed and Cambria even like do similar things with their music. It
gives you like some indie rock at times too.
Exactly.
That it's like, I mean, I wouldn't say they go full indie. Like you're not. We're not talking like the sound of Mumford and Sons and like that kind of stuff.
But like similar vibes. I mean, it's almost like if Mumford and Sons was influenced by like metal. I feel like they're influenced to a degree by metal bands. Like and you can hear that in their music, not necessarily their vocal delivery, but their instrumentation for sure. Songs like The Softest Touch is a big one. Like it sort of ends with I mean there's just heavier riffs in there that you can say, okay, well there's definitely elements of heavy music in this song.
Yeah. Is that your favorite?
It is my favorite song. Yeah. It is my favorite song because I like the callbacks in it. There's callbacks to Forest Fire, which is a song right before it. It's probably the slowest song on the record. It's another one of those like start slow, gradually build. It's probably, if I had to pick another favorite on the record, that's probably like number 2. Even though it's like the shortest and the softest. Again, that kind of goes on theme with me from some of the other records we talked about too. I just like those moments in records, but just that slow, gradual build up to a finale leading into a song as strong as The Softest Touch even amplifies it for me.
Yeah, this album was awesome, and I like the vibe that it has. It's at times it's very chill, like you could. I could see it being like a hanging out on the porch in the summer and drinking a beer and just kind of chilling or like around a campfire.
I look forward to doing that.
But then at times it gets very upbeat and like almost sort of like you said, it has the metal inspiration in there, and it gets heavier and kind of like amps you up a bit. I think for me, my favorite song is The Detail. I know that was one of the singles they released. Okay. But I probably listened to that song like 20 or 30 times, like once they released it before the album actually came out. So just kept listening to it. I'd say I also really like View to a Fill, which was another
but View to a Fill it's cool, and you see sort of the theme of the song in the music video as well. It's like, you can tell they wrote a lot of these songs, in quarantine, things like that, because View to a Fill is essentially, you're stuck in one place. You're kind of wishing that you were somewhere else, but you're not actually recognizing the beauty around you. So, it's kind of coming to the realization that it's real easy to say, I'd rather be somewhere else, sort of, the grass is always greener type mentality. But if you just take the time to kind of look at what's around you, you can see that there's a lot of beauty in where you're at. That's kind of, and there's a lot of cool themes. There's some activism themes. I mean, there's a lot of references to things like global warming and saving the planet and conservation and things like that throughout the record as well. But and it does it without getting too preachy. I know that's a thing that a lot of people don't like in music. But it's essentially a concept album about, the world, like better, the betterment of the world that you're in, and, sort of recognizing the beauty around you and things like that. I mean, it might not officially be a concept record. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to ask them. But
we'll defer.
But I definitely get those vibes, and the record flows together like a concept record would.
I do like that the songs all have that kind of feel to it, and like in a year of shit, that it's like, hey, maybe everything's not completely terrible. Like, I like that kind of message, because I feel like we all kind of need a ray of positivity. And,
for sure.
Stuff with us, all being, for the majority of the year, kind of cooped up for the most part.
Yeah, probably.
Except for Florida.
Probably the most accessible track. No, it's all accessible. This is one of the most accessible records while still being prog rock to its core. Like, I feel like I could play this for my dad, who's, a classic rock kind
Yeah.
of guy and he would connect to something on this record.
Yeah, as accessible as we mentioned Starset and like some of
Right.
Spirit Box and some of Sleep Token stuff, this one is by far on this
Yeah,
list.
it's definitely on
the
that
most.
in that category for sure, while still like striking every chord with a progressive music fan, in my opinion. I mean, if you like progressive music, Delta Sleep definitely strikes that chord while being accessible, which is sometimes tough to do. So, yeah, it's overall just one of the best records I've listened to, honestly, in a long time. And I honestly hope that they tour somewhere near where we're at, because I'd love to see them live. I actually at one point had tickets to a Delta Sleep show, and it was before I knew who Delta Sleep was, and I was going to see a local band called Save Us from the Archon. If you've never listened to Save Us from the Archon, they are a absolutely crazy instrumental metal band out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they have recently broke up, but their music's pretty fantastic. Check them out. But I was going to see them, and then they ended up dropping off the show, so I didn't go, and I kick myself every day. I have that ticket like pinned up on a cork board that I look at just to remind myself of how stupid I was.
That would definitely be cool to see them live. I mean, I've only recently gotten into them through you sharing them, and I do enjoy them. It'd probably be a pretty entertaining show to see. So next
Yeah,
time they're
I
in,
know
we'll
they-
have to hit them up and go.
I know they are touring. They're not necessarily coming close to us. I am considering traveling for a show. Hopefully we can make that work and go together. Find a
be
show
pretty awesome.
on a weekend or something. We can go catch them somewhere relatively close. But yeah, overall this record for me just checked every box, and that's why they're number one.
Yeah, so that's all of our top tens plus our honorable mentions. Like I said in the middle of the podcast, we always appreciate any new bands that maybe we haven't heard of, or if you want to share your top 10 lists. It's always interesting to see what vibes with everyone, and maybe what they didn't enjoy of the year. So feel free to hit us up on our social medias or anything, and let us know what your favorites were.
Yep. Twitter, we are at ProgGentPod, and Instagram, we are at Progressive Gentleman. So definitely hit us up on those. Let us know what you agree with, what you don't agree with. I'm sure there's a lot, but that's okay. That's what opinions are for.
That's why music's great.
And let us know what records we kept off these lists that should have been on there. Because I mean, we listened to so many records, and there were a lot that just barely didn't make it.
I'm sure we'll be kicking ourselves. We're going to comment of like, how do we miss this album?
Right, but that's what this is for, to sort of discover new music and share opinions and learn from each other. And we look forward to hearing from you. Hopefully you enjoyed this show, and we'll come back here soon. And I'm not sure exactly what our next show will be. We have a couple ideas in the works, but yeah, keep tuned in, and hopefully we'll talk to you guys soon. Hear from you soon as well.
Talk to you later, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, bye.